So today, we're going to dive into a really critical and, let's be honest, often debated part of the US Constitution, the 25th Amendment. And we're looking at it through the lens of a particular source that argues it's not just some historical curiosity, but a vital tool for handling a crisis right now. Let's get into it.
Right out of the gate, the material we're looking at today does not pull any punches. It basically throws the 25th Amendment right into the middle of this high-stakes constitutional drama. It presents using the amendment as a necessary, though obviously very difficult step to keep the country stable.
You see, the source isn't just making a casual observation. It's framing its entire argument as a direct call to action. According to this analysis, we're not talking about some theoretical problem for the future. No, it's presented as a very real, ongoing threat to the very foundations of democratic government.
So that just begs a huge question, right? If there's a crisis of fitness at the very top, what are you supposed to do? What tool does the Constitution actually give you to handle it? And that's exactly where our focus is going today, the amendment itself. Okay, so before we get any deeper into the source's critique, let's just hit pause. We need to get a really solid factual handle on the tool at the heart of this entire discussion. So what exactly is the 25th Amendment, and how in the world does it work?
You know, at its core, it's designed to answer two absolutely massive questions. First, who takes over if the president dies or resigns? And second, and maybe the trickier one, what happens if a president is still alive, but is, well, unable to actually do the job?
So how does this whole thing actually play out? Well, it kicks off with a really dramatic move from the president's own team. If the VP and a majority of the cabinet say the president can't serve, the vice president takes power immediately. But, and this is a huge but, the president can fight back. If they argue they're perfectly fine, the whole issue goes to Congress. And get this, it then takes a supermajority, we're talking 2/3 of both the House and the Senate, to keep the president from their duties.
Yeah, the takeaway here is crystal clear. This was never, ever meant to be easy. It's a fantastic example of checks and balances in action, right? The president's closest advisors can sound the alarm, but the final call, that goes to our elected representatives in Congress. The bar for removal is set incredibly high.
Now, you might be thinking this whole thing sounds like a modern invention, something cooked up recently. But nope, the worries that actually created the 25th Amendment are rooted deep in Cold War history. It was born from a very real fear of what might happen if the nation's leader was suddenly out of commission.
And this timeline, man, it just lays the whole story out. It really starts in the mid-50s, when President Eisenhower's health scares made people ask some pretty terrifying questions about who is actually in charge, especially with nuclear tensions at their peak. Then, fast forward to 1963, President Kennedy is assassinated, and for over a year, the country had no vice president. These events just exposed these massive gaps in the Constitution, and that's what led directly to the amendment being ratified in 1967.
Okay, so with that history and the legal mechanics in mind, let's circle back to the main argument of our source material. It takes this tool from the Eisenhower era and applies it directly to a modern political crisis, arguing it's more relevant than ever.
And here it is, the core claim from the source. It argues that the conduct of the Trump administration was exactly the kind of situation that required using these constitutional safeguards. The author's point is that the very scenarios the 25th Amendment was literally designed to address were unfolding in real time, and the tool to act was right there.
From there, the analysis really levels a sharp critique at the political leaders of that period. The source alleges that they failed in their duty, that they overlooked what it describes as signs of mental instability and executive overreach, and the central accusation, that political loyalty was prioritized way above constitutional duty.
And all of this brings us to the source's conclusion, which kind of zooms out from one specific administration to make a much broader point about how democracy is supposed to work. It's really framed as one last call to action, but for everyone.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? It's that the systems designed to protect the nation are only as strong as the people who are willing to actually uphold them. The source argues that keeping the country stable isn't just a job for the people in power. It's a shared responsibility that rests on the shoulders of both officials and citizens.
And that leaves us with a final, really powerful question to think about. The Constitution gives us a process, a roadmap for what to do. But what it can't provide is the judgment or the courage to actually act on it. Ultimately, the document lays out the how, but deciding when and by who, well, that remains one of the most profound challenges in any democracy.